We in here. We in here. Oh, I gotta stretch a minute. Greetings. This is how I see. I ain't had to clear my throat the whole time since before I started this video. Greetings. Give honor to Source, the Creator, making all these things possible today, in this moment. Y'all bear with me. Let's give honor to Source, the Creator, making all this possible. Ancestors known and unknown. Clap it up for yourself wherever you are in your recovery, in your recreating your life, your image, your purpose, and so forth. It's funny how I say recreating or rebranding yourself, even your image. If y'all can see what I got pulled up here, we're talking about PTSD and the symptoms of that, post-traumatic stress disorder. Listen, I ain't proclaiming to be no expert in none of this stuff. I just make it, speak from my experience, make it relatable and connect you to maybe something possibly going on with you that you don't even realize. So, yeah. Or somebody you may know. That's where a lot of grace comes in. I don't know the duration I'm doing before y'all, because I was, I almost said initiated, but I had an experience with a drum circle the other day that was practicing. And tell me why I went out there dancing, doing my little thing, dancing, and my body is sore, so sore. All the jumping and movement and all that stuff. Whew, got some tightness, some soreness. I'm just gonna stretch before I get into this. I'm gonna multitask though. So as y'all seen up here on the screen, if you've been following me, following along with these videos, I have two things I'm gonna tie into, referencing another, video that I saw a sister speaking about. I'm either gonna play the video or I'm gonna read over what she said, but most likely, I give gratitude to the people, to the things that I come to get clarity for, because a lot of us are going through things that is very challenging and trying to get and seeking answers for. Y'all bear with me, I'm just trying to stretch. Some people may say it's age, it's more than age. Or when you're dancing, when you're 6'4", you jumping and dancing, and I was dancing on brick and everything. Because where they were set up at, oh my gosh. I'm coming back around to what I was talking about, but oh my God. Ooh, that helped a lot. Whew. Yeah, that definitely supported a lot with that little stretch right there. Stretching is very helpful. When you're talking about repressed and suppressed things in your hips and your body, it definitely is very helpful, supportive. Yoga has definitely changed my life. Stretching has definitely changed my life. I feel like I'm still getting through the things of like when I was younger, when I didn't go to get treated for being hit by a car when I was young, and yeah, that has definitely caught up with me. Trust me, it has been a great experience, challenging, painful, but worth it. So prioritizing your health has a lot to do with what you also have experienced in your childhood. But leading into now, I'm realizing the big picture around how much I have to prioritize that now, showing up healthily for myself. Because there were times, let me tell you, it used to be so much inflammation in my back or in my, to where I would literally, have quick mood swings, temper tantrums, or whatever you want to call it. I didn't want to deal with nobody. It affected my relationships with my partner and my daughter. Like at the time, I was trying to show up for everybody. It was a lot on my body. Because we're taught to be strong as men and keep going, and it's more than that. So, yeah. That's why I put so much emphasis in, with so much passion, and have so much compassion for myself now to put so much into what I do and make it relatable. Or as I speak on these things, it is very therapeutic for me, and I, pray or that is very supportive for you as well, or you can connect or bring you into my world or connect the dots with something and someone in your life. So again, if you've been following me with talking about how a lot of us generationally, millennials or whatever you want to call it, and the previous generation, and how I realized like accepting my role and my purpose of being so much of a bridge from for the youth, and also highlighting the very uncomfortable things, not just for us but also for the generation that came before us. And if it does resonate, you don't have to. I'm not forcing no one, but this gives you a bigger picture on what we're like purging or clearing, the old ways of living, how again we're prioritizing our well-being as those who grew up in the early 1980s to the 1996 era, and how vital it is to teach our kids to come back home to themselves, or as we come back home to ourselves, they will also be led to remember from what and how far they have come and evolved, because they also, me sharing this also gives them knowledge of who they are and where they come from, and the awareness around what it took for them to get to where they are, and not feel shame and guilt on living a life that's completely different, even for us as millennials and what do they call them, Gen X or Gen Z. Their life be completely different, especially with the implementing of more technology, things being more digitized or database and so forth. Their world is going to be completely different. It's funny because this phone I have, like it's one of those like razors. It's like a flip touch screen, bro. I remember having the first razor when I was young, the first razor, and so much has changed drastically. And the reason I say that is because, again, us being like the beginning or coming into that before our elders, that right there was a shift. And that right there is almost scarcity for them, because that was so new. And we're also talking about people who have so much, who are so tightly knitted to religious beliefs or other things, to where they'll even call it demonic, they'll even call it crazy, they'll even call it so many things, just to not adapt or not wanting to adapt. And that's why I feel like the disturbance is, and the disconnect. As I've spoken before, if you've been following me, you can look at my previous videos about how the greatest transfer in generational wealth, greatest generational wealth transfer is happening right now. And that isn't just physical, y'all. That is emotional, mental, and spiritual. This is why a lot of us have, behavior patterns that our mother and father, or even great-grandmother and so forth. I mean, it goes that deep. It really goes that deep. And so that's why, again, there can be so much resistance for these elders. There's miscommunication because they're not talking about what they go through. And where I'm getting at is this, is that their generational trauma and what they've experienced. A lot of these people have experienced a lot of hardship. So when I look at these very things, and the reason I'm talking about PTSD is because You're talking about people who were part of wars. You're talking about people. I met a sister the other day. I forgot what country she said she was from, and it was just amazing to me to see how she mentioned how her grandmother. Like I said, I would not call people these titles, but she said her mother or was an immigrant, or how her grandparents or her mother came here. It was a lot of things to where she had to flee the country or flee her country because of war. And a lot of people don't know. I always express to them how a lot of people felt like, and if you do your research, or if there is an elder who is probably not from this country, a lot of them saw this as the promised land. And the promised land concept comes from the fact of a deeper awareness around them being somewhere where they felt the American dream, which we've heard before, has a lot to be associated with freedom for their ancestors. So a lot of people don't know the depths of when you're talking about war, not just internally, but you're talking about a physical or a battle. A lot of people were fighting to be somewhere where they did not have to experience these war tendencies or this warlike behavior or this wounded aspect of the masculinity being displayed through actions, and from the false empowerment of a patriarchal who slaughtered so many men, and not just men, but children and women, to get to their place of hierarchy. And the karma collected from that is now being restored and balanced. And this is where a lot of emphasis is going to come in on a lot of, I tell y'all about, where a lot of your grandfathers and fathers and great grandfathers who are part of these so-called wars had a hand in the unaliving of so many innocent people, kids, children, and so forth. And when you talk about these very things, I was telling my partner even how you can see the stress, you can see so many things in a lot of these people bodies, even how they grow in age. Like, you can see the identity crisis that they have taken on for so long. And let me see. Wow, I didn't even see this last time. This is huge right here. Let me make sure I do not exit out this. And I almost did. Oh my gosh. Okay. Inspiration. What's that? Deficit. Is that I said that correctly? Deficit syndrome. One study suggested some baby boomers may experience inspiration deficit, y'all, it is syndrome, lacking clear plans for their future despite believing their best years are ahead. Oh my fucking goodness. Wow. You know what? This connects to what I'm about to say about this sister in this video. I'm so grateful and honored. Listen, y'all, if you follow me, the mental health thing, we all know. This is why I highlight it so much and talk about it. Like, when I bring up anxiety, when we read it here, anxiety, depression, if you follow me right here, substance abuse and other mental health issues, which may be seen in subsequent generations, this has been one of the biggest things that I've seen. The other day I was walking into a Kroger, or that's a grocery store for those who follow me in another country and so forth. That's a grocery store. Grocery store is just a food market, indoor. And I'm walking in there with my partner and my kids, and there's these younger generations, and they're doing things like trying to upsell or sell merchandise or whatever. And then you have, there was this one gentleman sitting on the ground, just in there. And I have noticed this so much. I've talked about how a lot of people have went to wars or into wars in their younger days. And now you see a lot of these younger men, some of your grandfathers or someone's father, so forth. A lot of them have due to unresolved emotions, unresolved memories, PTSD syndrome or symptoms. They have not had the proper support through their experiences as they return to the States or America. They haven't had the proper support. No amount of money is going to fix the internal warfare, spiritual warfare, vices, repress and suppressing memories through what they've experienced visually, what they've experienced through the dysregulated nervous system that they have been so consumed by, or or have dealt with over the last 50, 60 years. You're talking about some people who were as early as 18 going into these, being drafted and so forth, and now you're talking about the fact of how a lot of them are now in their 60s. Baby boomers is from 1946 to 64 or 80s or whatever. And you're talking about the fact of these are 60, 70, 80 people, age, and you're talking about unresolved things. And this is why I see why a lot of bitterness, not just with the women who were left alone with their children, who developed resentment and led to their bitterness because of they were left with unresolved issues, unprotected, abused, emotionally abandoned, physically abandoned, with the physical protection of the father or man having to go to a whole other place and leaving the mother, with responsibilities that she was never prepared for, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and so forth. So that made them be in a position where they had to be more of, in this distorted way, never having truly balancing or know how to balance their emotion. So that's why, again, from my perspective, I see the seeping in of a father-like figure to replace the emotional abandonment and spiritual abandonment for this. It's almost like this character of a religious figure to replace that which the man physically couldn't, in a way. But it's also deeper psychologically to replace him with said something that never gave them fulfillment. And the reason I say that is that's why I would see a lot of, growing up in the South, how certain figures were used psychologically to keep women looping through, never really resolving the father wound, but to keep that resentment and unresolved issue in her tissue, because if you take the T off, underlying issues, to keep her from really learning about more of herself and why she is the way she is, and so forth. And that's just my perspective on it, and so forth, is to make people think. So again, when you're talking about men going into these other countries, when you're talking about mass incarceration, when you're talking about a lot of things that were designed to keep, most importantly, women occupied, busy, our grandmothers and great grandmothers, but literally keeping them away from really being more in tune, learning about themselves, really nurturing and balancing who they are, and facing the fears and other things passed through their generation that they never had the opportunity. And so again, they never got the opportunity to sit down, or being able to, until they're now in their later 60s and 70s and 80s, if so. And some of them still are consumed by the fact of they will go to church the rest of their lives. And I'm not here to attack people over their belief systems, but this is something that has been almost like, for me, and a lot of people that can relate, that I know, like a very traumatic experience for them, because they feel a lot of grandmothers care more about their identity, and it's almost like a little girl that gets this attention from church members or people or pastors or whomever it is. They get more attention and feel like they get more acceptance there, rather than trying to realized like rather than giving herself the attention she deserves, therefore she can develop healthy and authentic relationships with herself and men and so forth, not just focusing on a healthy relationship or developing almost like a false identity around trying to be this perfectionist around said preacher, pastor, or bishop, and other people in the church. Then come home and that's a whole nother thing, switching it up on everyone else. Because again, as much as you went out there and learned all these things, you still came home and still had things unresolved, and a lot of that again from your childhood up to very now. So again, and the thing about this is like, again, you had a lot of those women who were silenced, and a lot of them who didn't talk about what they went through, didn't talk about the abuse, didn't talk about the traumas, didn't talk about the fact of how, like, let's talk about it. Like, a lot of these wives or mothers who came from poverty-stricken environments, low incomes and so forth, and this is all cultures and creeds. Don't be fooled, y'all. A lot of these people who ancestors came here of lighter shade did not come in the best mindset. Did not come with trinkets and wealth and all that. Some did. Some came, some had certain things, but at the same moment, again, everyone didn't come with that. Some people were taught by indigenous people how to farm. These are the things that they put it places, but I'm going to verbalize it for you. I'm going to communicate it to you. There are things in certain countries, like even when I learned, not countries, but where I learned, where I grew up at, where they had photos of people that were a part of said army or a part of said Confederacy or whatever you want to call it, like that actually farmed with the indigenous people. There are photos of this. There are people who, when you're talking about your World War IIs and the Korean War and all this other stuff, I'm very familiar with it, because when I look at, when I grew up in North Carolina, that's a so-called state in the United States, in the South per se. And a lot of these people who migrated from that said area, I didn't even know about this, like the Korean War, the World War IIs, people from my mom, I told y'all about, like a man that is almost like my complexion or darker, he's a descendant of Germany. Yes, he's a descendant of Germany. And it's wild because I didn't connect the dots until I realized, like, okay, my mom is indigenous to this land, my great grandmother and so forth, until I start learning more deeper about other nationalities and how people have been migrating through countries for hundreds of years, eons and so forth. And so black and white concept thing was just purposely inflicted or, put there to keep people in a state of division or seeing black and white, and almost like not realizing like different color or different shades of people have always been and will always be. So learning about that, I start to, let me plug up my laptop. Learning about that, I start to realize like, whoa, this is much deeper, because if you do your research on how even where I grew up at is called, like I learned more about this Camp Sutton, and that's Camp like CAMP and SUTTON, and I learned more about like how at a point in time North Carolina had one of the biggest, not campgrounds, but military stations in the whole U.S. at a point in time. I don't know if they still do, but this is what people sit here talking about it. These were people who came from all walks of life. I'm setting, Army. Look at this. Let me tell y'all something. This is deep because funny thing about this, Camp Sutton historical marker, right? Let me bring y'all into my world. Let me tell you something. Right here, look, Camp Sutton historical marker. So most of this, I'm gonna read into it. At a point in time was like a army facility. What's so funny about this, I was birthed right here at this hospital. What's so wild about this is that inside of this Bojangles, which is a restaurant, there are photos on the wall of people of German descent and other places that are farming with the indigenous people. So what's so amazing about this, I was getting clarity to this, I was like, why am I, it makes you question, like, why am I here? Why didn't my grandmother and grandfather tell us about a lot of these things? Simply because when y'all get so caught up in the Ku Klux Klan and start learning about the Scottish Rites and how people did what they did, it was almost like, let me tell you, it goes so much deeper to where at a point in time people lived amongst each other. I don't know what possessed them to do certain things, but me connecting, when I say the PTSD, to probably what my great-great-grandfather or someone else who were probably part of a war that they did not start. Because when I look at the indigenous nature of where I grew up at, and learn about my ancestry and learn about my great-grandmother and where they lived, a lot of these places talks about the reason why this is so significant is showing you what is passed on through generations. Look at this, World War II. Now I was telling y'all, look what it says right here. World War II, the child of a World War II veteran with PTSD might experience anxiety and difficulty in forming close relationship. Yes. One of my greatest fears was commitment. A baby boomer who experienced economic hardship or societal, social upheaval might pass on a sense of uncertainty or instability to their children. I can acknowledge that. Baby boomers who struggle with mental health issues could inadvertently model unhealthy coping mechanism for their children. Oh my gosh. And the reason why this is so vital is because I know from personal experiences that my mother is still present day, and I know a lot of people are still battling with substance abuse, are still battling with anxiety and depression, things that are unresolved. And guess who is one of those children that come from that? Me. This is huge because when you're talking about personally health issues, inadvertently model unhelping coping mechanism, I'm here changing and trying to pioneer or restore and rebalance and reclaim the power of embracing more of my indigenous and holistic practices spiritually and so forth, and how that is attacked immediately, because it's almost like my mom would tell me about certain things spiritually that her grandmother did, and I'm like, okay. But then I realize a lot of them use it to try to abuse their power or try to do things to where it went against universal law, and those who know spiritually know exactly what I'm speaking of, because indigenous and people spiritual, all these things have always been. There's no denying that. And this is where a lot of belief systems comes in. So just that right there, again, the importance of even this right here, being a part of this, that means I can acknowledge it and accept it and don't have to feel shame and guilt around the fact of what my ancestors have experienced. And so now I take full accountability until acknowledging it, standing firm, and being and walking upright in it, and having confidence to go get the support, because maybe my grandfather, my great-grandmother, they couldn't deal with it, or they couldn't have the opportunity, because in these areas there was very much so a lot of a lot of things going on to where you had a lot of race wars or a lot of self-hatred. The Ku Klux Klan was very adamant in these places. Okay, let's read here. Camp Sutton opened in Monroe, Union County, North Carolina, in March 7, 1942, as an Army training camp. It was named for, Frank Sutton, the first of many of Union County who died in the war. Camp Sutton was designed to house and train 18,000 soldiers who later expanded from 1994. Remember, I told y'all, around 1994, 1946 is where this is your boomers. These are the generations who were who served. Now look what it said, 1944 to 1996. 1946 served as a German POW camp. Today, Camp Sutton is now developed into other uses, mostly commercial, and very few of original buildings remain standing. And y'all gotta realize, let me tell you something, that spiritually, the reason why I talk about this, because years ago, my mother went through a transition of going from being evicted, right? And we ended up at, it's funny, let me go back to that. What did I click on before? We ended up right here. She went through a transition and we ended up, there is a hotel. CVS, where is the hotel at? I don't know why it doesn't, it's a hotel that was in this area right here, basically. Because the Bojangles is like literally right in front of it. So there's a hotel right here. And it's funny, what's so funny about this is that you're talking about being on the land where wars, the energy of unresolved ancestors, the energy of people who probably died innocently, people who have went through things and they don't discuss this in your school setting. There's always an emphasis on this religious character. There's always something to overlap what has been happening. You're seeing pictures of things that have happened even further, going further back, where I know people who were a part of in your Anson County. These are towns called Wadesboro, outside or further down outside of the Monroe where I grew up in, or where I was birthed, where there were wars. These were people who came from the name Anson. What was he from? That guy was from England. So again, you're talking about people who are descendants from other countries. So let me see if I can find more into this. You notice here it talks about German descent. These are people, y'all immediately think that they look of lighter shade. No, these are people of darker shade. I told you specifically how my mother dated a man, and we automatically want to call people black. We automatically want to call people certain things, and in reality, their nationality, they're not that. I talked firsthand to, that man, and he was talking about how, he used to go back home to Germany. I'm like, dude, you German and you dark? So, yeah. And again, a lot of these places were the campsite, wedding photo. A lot of these places were, y'all be surprised at the stuff that happened there. Let me click on this one. So that's why energetically, y'all don't realize a lot of things we still carry that we haven't faced, that we have never acknowledged. And then you're talking about suppressing and repressed emotions. I don't know why this not loaded up. I'm gonna give it time. So when you talk, a lot of us don't even realize how much let's get into PTSD. We don't even realize what we're dealing with here, because we were never taught that. We're just taught to go to school and so forth and just do this and do that. And don't realize wow, our health is the way it is. A lot of unresolved things. So listen, PTSD, re-experiencing symptoms, flashbacks, intrusive and vivid memories of traumatic events, making person feel like they are reliving it. Nightmares, disturbing dreams related to trauma, intrusive thoughts, unwanted and distressing memories or images of the events. Now, how many of you know y'all great grandfathers who did experience these wars, and mothers too, women, you know, what, you have people that live, you know, I hear people say they were military babies. You know, I'm like, what the fuck is that? So you learn about these things and realize like how people have been put in positions where, you know, they're traveling, and where I realized like there's not a lot of stability. It's like, what war are you fighting? What is, my thing is the bigger picture, what is so unresolved in these Americas? And when I look at the energy of generations, that's it. A lot of these people are dealing with things unresolved, and the climate of that, the collective energy of that, is what we're dealing with current day. Where people don't realize, like, sometimes you realizing, like, you thinking that y'all supposed to be together, you're thinking that this connection, not to say things cannot happen the way it is, or all things are possible, but a lot of us that have come in connections with people, and I've noticed this even with someone I used to talk to, and you know, somehow, some way, I told her, I felt like we have something, or dealt with something, or something where your ancestors we did not, you know, something did not pan out correctly. There's a reason why I feel like our connection did not, like, go further, because not only things unresolved within you, but I think there's a deeper aspect to this because of where you're from and where you grew up at. And I think maybe our ancestors or people that came before us clashed. There was a betrayal. There was something. And most people don't realize that a lot of the things we dealing with internally is because we hold the energy of those ancestors. And you want to know why there's so much rage and so much anger around people. It's because a lot of us know what we dealt with. We know what our ancestors dealt with, and to have someone to try to teach us to be passive aggressive and to never acknowledge it and to never move on. We don't have to feel like we got to be accepted. I will always encourage people, it's not about being accepted by someone else's world who's not even at peace with their world. They're not even at peace, and their ancestors are not at peace. A lot of them people, people don't realize, like, when you hear this saying, like, keep your heart clean, keep your hands clean, and even your heart clean, that's what I realized. A lot of these people who are dealing with certain things like this is that they're holding the energy, and a lot of their even descendants or people after them, the generations after them, have no knowledge of the fact of what their grandfathers and grandmothers were in, what they were a part of. And so they're acting like their hands are clean and their hearts are clean, and they're not. They're not. And that's just the beauty of this Aquarian age, because everything is being brought to light. And we can either make peace with it, or we can either go at war. And that's what things that are unresolved within yourself or outwardly is, that you're either at war with yourself, or there was resistance. And everyone didn't take on things like everyone else did. Everyone that were darker shade was not, color didn't make them kin. You had a lot of people betrayed and sell each other out because of the greed and self-righteousness. So when I'm reading about this, the avoiding reminders, trying to avoid situations, people, places, or objects that remind individuals of traumatic experiences, you're talking about a country who still have fucking military things or stuff still around and parade it as if it's so harmonious and peaceful and vibrant. And that literally triggers people. That literally have people almost in like the psychosis to disassociate themselves from the reality of the fucking pain that they not only cause themselves by suppressing it, but the pain that has caused generations of women and children. And wondering why people don't fuck with y'all or don't like you. It's deeper than that. It's much more deeper. So when I say a transfer in generational wealth, that's a transfer in the well-being of coming to the awareness. How can we be better for ourselves? How can we prioritize our well-being? Well, for one, you can't fucking ignore who didn't prioritize their well-being. You can't ignore the fact of, you know, what caused them not to prioritize it. So with that, when you're talking about people avoiding situations, we know there's a huge passive-aggressive energy in the air when it comes to people who ancestors or people who are a lighter shade, not all, but most, who know exactly what they're doing. And then even the people who are darker, who also had their hand in things, who also played a part. And this is just through going to the archives when I was younger, or a few years ago, and learning about specifically men and women who actually signed over this, played a part in people who are of different nationalities and lighter shades, just to simply do what? Get over on one another. You know, they had to do what they had to do, but at the hands of what? There's a reason they used to do this right here. Do this and do this. There's a reason. There's a symbolism to this. So again, it's right in your faces. I noticed this too. Even my experience growing up, from just personal, like growing up in abusive or homes and stuff like that, the slamming of doors or certain things like that, that tense, that comes from a dysregulated nervous system. This is a big one too, insomnia. I know a lot of people go through substance abuse. I know a lot of people that grew up in that era, and they have very much difficulty sleeping or resting or getting a good night's rest. And so this is why you see a lot of them so focused on a workload. You see a lot of them, their bodies, they look so bent out of shape, or they look so like they went through so much so soon. And they have. And they're not getting a lot of rest, or they distract themselves with a whole lot of workload, or focus on working and focus on a lot of things, and the irritability and anger outbursts. Oh my gosh. I see this with my grandmother. I see this with a lot of people growing up. The increased anger, frustration, and difficulty controlling emotions. Yes. And then with that, the escapism through religion. This is what predominantly I see in the South. Is through the suppressing of the emotions, they use certain religions or certain things as an escapism, or through substance abuse. And that's why you were here in the South, like people will go to church on a Sunday, but then on a Friday, Saturday, Saturday party. Yeah, stop acting like this hasn't been something. This is just another way for people to escape from not feeling. Being constantly on guard and watchful for potential threats. Hypervigilant. That's a huge one. I had to eventually learn, as I recovered, to learn to be safe within my body again. This was a big thing for me because of the demographics. And so when you look at certain demographics, like what y'all call the hood, or what we call the trenches, or whatever, y'all keep forgetting these used to be stomping grounds of wars, of energies that were not at peace. This is a spiritual thing, spiritual warfare first. So you're talking about things that were never resolved. And then you got some people that are of darker shade. Again, I keep telling y'all, of different nationalities. When people migrated here, there were people like Gullah Geechee people. These are two different African tribes. There were people from different places. There were people that did not have a native tongue to these lands, that were of different descendants. Different, yeah. And so forth. And guess what? They were not, everyone did not get along. There were people, chiefs, people here who allowed people like your Buffalo Bills and other patriarchal figures to come in, and due to whatever they agreed upon, they were slaughtered. And when you're talking about tribes and you're talking about indigenous people, there were women along with those kids. So you're talking about a land with so much unresolved trauma, repressed and suppressed memories and emotions that we're asked to just simply get over, which again, a generation of warlike behavior, destruction, distorted masculinity, masqueraded in military or warlike tendencies to make it seem like everything is all right, when these are some of the most angry, frustrated, unhappy people who have been a part of things like that, who are transitioning as we speak out of the physical. because this is a part of a new order of things, a new way of being. Because as we prioritize our well-being, the war is not just spiritual between the resistance of those who came before us, but it plays out in the physical. The resistance of them wanting to sign documents, them wanting to do certain things, so that their world, as they know that they haven't accepted, crumbles. And it already has, because the more we start to step into our power, the more we start to acknowledge the shit that we have experienced, the more that we reclaim our power, and then that energy and so forth returns to its rightful place. That spirit of guilt and shame returns. That anger, that rage returns to where its original source. As we acknowledge it and purge it and begin to embrace the emotions around what was unresolved, we begin to live more harmonious and peaceful and abundant life, however we see fit. And so again, there are shit unresolved here. I don't care what president, politician, I don't care who comes up and preaches this and does this and does that. There are none of them that I cannot sit right across from and tell them what your experience was not like mine. So your world is not like mine. Even when it comes to people of darker shade, they still have that black and white complex. A lot of them, even I know artists, I know people in certain positions and so forth, their mindset, they are like, we're talking about undeveloped people here. This is what they're pissed at. That's why a lot of people get so frustrated around the fact of how we as a certain generation are told not to express or be ourselves and be authentic, and it's almost ostracized or pushed away purposefully, and then they pull back their hand and don't want to support us because they feel like, just as their generation or era was hard and difficult and all those unresolved things, they feel like they have the audacity and the entitlement to project that shit onto us, and we supposed to take and carry their load. No, absolutely not. You carry your own shit, because you carry that shit right on alone until your generation, until you had the opportunity to unpack it and to realize, just as we're doing it now, as we recognize here, especially mood symptoms, negative thoughts and feelings, persistent negative beliefs about oneself, of the world, and feeling guilt and shame or blame. Oh my gosh, that's one of the, as I rebuilt my self-esteem, that's one of the things I realized, that a lot of that climate, y'all gotta realize, like the climate around the elders before, their mindset was not focused on the best outcome. I've seen this happen with a lot of people that I either was connected with and so forth. They were so easy to want to place the blame. They didn't want to embrace their feelings. They were so deflective and defensive, and also they were persistent on having negative beliefs, on seeing the world at war, never at peace. They were persistent on never acknowledging what they've done to how they came to be. I don't know how that rhyme, but and so with that, this is where you have the split, the wheat being separated from the chaff. This is what's happening, y'all. You don't have to accept it. It is what it is. But this is what's happening. Because as we evolve and they refuse to, they're going to go out the same way they came in. I keep telling y'all that. Their war is not our war. These elders want their experience to be our experience so fucking like so good. But it ain't gonna happen. Oh my gosh, reduced enjoyment to engage in previous pleasurable activities, loss of interest in activities. I know this personally from someone that let's just say we were on this adventure, and this has been a pattern where I talked to someone, dated someone, right, and their mother was so attached to how her daughter should have been and what her daughter should be and so forth, even the dad. And these are people, again, in this era, in this generation, Their focus was so much on the worst possibility, the worst outcome, and never around the enjoyment of the experience. And that situation ended up panning out for her returning, which I wish her well on her journey. But during that relationships, I noticed how a lot of people who don't have a confidence or self-esteem are dealing with things that are not even theirs. A lot of you are dealing with traumas and a lot of things unresolved, which I know isn't fair. And you're taking on and have taken on a belief system that's not even yours. You haven't even developed your own independent thinking, your own awareness around your life and your purpose. So therefore, who else belief system do you have? It's your mothers or great grandmothers and so forth. You don't have one of your own. You haven't developed that. And that's the thing about what's uncomfortable for a lot of people, that they won't find their purpose. They won't evolve. And y'all don't want to accept that a lot of people came here not to evolve, only to remind you to evolve. That's it. When I see a lot of people, when I see these elders, that shit reminds me, motivate me, like, bro, this is why I prioritize my well-being. This is why I stay to myself, or this is why I focus on like-minded individuals. This is why I keep creating my content and spreading whatever message, that I have from a place of integrity and authenticity. So you're talking about people who have a lost interest in enjoyment, enjoy, fun. And I've seen this with, a recent connection that I'm currently in, and then like seeing the father figure, have this, as I've talked about, this incessive almost connection that a lot of people are unaware that typically in the single parent setting, whether father or mother, a lot of people have unhealthy attachments to their kids and excessively have this emotional attachment to them because of a mother or father wound that they never addressed or they never resolved. And so they don't see their children outgrowing them. They don't see their children blooming right before their eyes and encouraging and clapping them and doing the very thing that not only they wish they could have done, but they try to devalue them in a narcissistic way. And then once they start making certain decisions that could potentially or will have them outgrow the environment and the circumstances that they're in, some of them will pull their hand back. Some of them won't support you financially, emotionally, mentally, and so forth, because it highlights the very thing they never resolved within themselves, because they never felt secure. So their insecurities are very loud. Or the silence support is even louder. That's someone message today. The silent support it's not even support. The silent help, like I'll help you get past, but I won't support you. Support is longevity. Help is like temporary. That's just my perspective. I'll help you right now. But supporting you along your endeavors, because I didn't get to do what I did and I can no longer vicariously live through my fears and what I didn't fulfill through you. Oh, no, I'm not going to support you. That's what a lot of this generation is, because they're so adamant on doing what they've done, and they've done what they did for so long that they don't want to see you progress or expand your awareness, your consciousness, or your life. So how dare them? Because they're still dealing with this shit right here, y'all. They're still dealing with this shit right here. They're still dealing with this. And some of it's not their fault. I give them grace. They're still dealing with this. Feeling detached or numb, experiencing a sense of emotional disconnection or detachment from others. I know all too well. I know this shit all too well. This is most of your elders in present day. All too well. This definitely is when you see a mother with a mother wound. This is what you see, this emotional disconnect to their daughters. So that's why they are jealous or envy, because they project their shit onto them, or they disconnect from them. So they're not teaching them the importance of how secure they should be emotionally, listen to their intuition and follow their gut and so forth. And it looks different for a little boy, because that disconnect creates a wound or emotional abandonment. this is what a lot of, again, due to a lot of fathers being displaced, whether in, imprisonment or whatever it is societally, you have a lot of women who have a lot of frustration around why they could not live their life. And they're not angry at you. They're not angry at us. They're angry at themselves. And no one showed them how to be guided back to themselves. No one showed them how to regulate that emotion. No one showed them how to enjoy life or embrace it. So that's why I see a lot of young kids now, they're so disassociated from the present, or they don't know how to even enjoy life no more. Where a lot of us grew up, where we had fun, where we did things, where we engaged in activities and so forth. So the energy of this place, what me and my partner has been talking about, has a lot to do with being somewhere where it's more upbeat, more vibrant, more things are more accessible for things to be experienced, such as joy, such as harmony, such as people not concerned about what someone looks like and so forth. No, the climate of America is the well-being, and the well-being is that most of, whether they are passive aggressive, are dealing with PTSD. This is your great grandfathers, your grandfathers and so forth are dealing with this. Your grandmothers are dealing with abandonment issues, emotional abandonment. Whether you want to look at it generationally, whether you want to look at it from a lens of people who did go to war or didn't go to war, you're still dealing with certain demographics. You're still dealing with emotional trauma. You're still dealing with a lot of things that, again, that are unresolved. And so, again, okay, that never load. I don't really care. So the beauty of all of this is that, I'm gonna say this. Should I play this before I go? Yeah. Okay. So this is what we're dealing with. Let me see if I can find this video again. Okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna see if
Let's talk about the psychology behind being a hater. Did you know that it's actually way easier to be a hater than it is to genuinely...
Y'all grandmas and mamas,
so if you're just
daddies are haters.
Or rolling your eyes or speaking
up against someone,
let's talk about the psychology behind being...
You gotta hate yourself to not see someone
progress. That it's
actually
way easier to be a hater.
Let me let y'all
Let's talk about the psychology behind being a hater. Did you know that it's actually way easier to be a hater than it is to genuinely support someone? So if you're disliking someone or rolling your eyes or speaking out against something you don't even fully understand, you're not being different. You're actually going right along with the status quo. Hello, my name is Dr. Calmine. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, professor, scientist, and podcast host. And if you're here to learn. So let's break down why people are more likely to hate on or feel negatively towards the tall poppy syndrome. Professor, scientist, and podcast host. And if you're here to learn. So let's break down why people are more likely to hate on or feel negatively towards those who they perceive as doing better than them, especially when they don't know them. The tall poppy syndrome. So the tall poppy syndrome is when people want to cut others down just for standing out. If they shine too bright or if they achieve something that the other person hasn't, you become a target. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your success feels like a threat to their comfort zone. I don't know, she's just doing too much. I like people who are humble. I'm just different. I don't know. I know everybody loves them, but I just don't like the energy. Then there's psychological projection. So that's when people take their insecurities and place them on someone else. You're likely not doing too much. They're just uncomfortable seeing confidence that they don't yet have for themselves. They need to go sit down somewhere before they embarrass themselves. Social comparison theory says that we're typically measuring ourselves up to others. So when you see someone traveling or thriving or glowing, it's natural to start asking, what am I doing wrong? And instead of sitting with that discomfort, some people simply lash out. She always on vacation, like, do you even work? There's also internalized scarcity. So in historically excluded communities, we're often taught that there's only one seat at the table, so someone else's win can feel like your loss. And that is not solely hate, it's also scarcity trauma. If the survival mode says, if they got it, I won't be able to get it. Wow. they got the invite and I didn't. But you must know somebody in the application process. There's also this concept called Schadenfreude. And let's be honest, it has to do with some people who enjoy the downfall of others. It's taking pleasure in someone else's pain, especially if they were seen as too successful or too confident. It's a quick hit of superiority. It's also rooted in shame. Or just being a bud. You heard what happened with them? See, I knew it was going to fall apart eventually. So, here's what you can do. I'm glad I'm not like that. They should probably get help. The truth is, most of these reactions are understandable, but they're not liberating. They're keeping us small. So instead of thinking, why them, try asking, what is their success to make me think that I can't have, and why? Because that's where the root is, and that's where the healing starts. Let's talk about the psychology behind being a hater. Man. Did you know that it's actually weight?
You know what? That's funny. That wasn't even a video I was supposed to be sharing with y'all. But y'all probably needed that. It was actually another video that's toxic. It's so hilarious. Where it talks about, and I forgot her name, but that's still a great video because a lot of that I can relate to, how people purposely want to cut you down because they're intimidated by your confidence or success or said success. But there was another video the sister was talking about, mentioning, are you going to be your truth or live in someone else's lie? And how we have let undeveloped people tell us who we are meant to be as we're still trying to develop our own self-worth.
Right.
And this was a big one she mentioned. Who am I to people? It's none of my business. Man, who am I to other people? It's none of my business. Wow, that hits different. So again, the one I wanted to highlight is, how have we allowed undeveloped people to tell us who we're meant to be in the world, or just, while we're still trying to find our self-worth. And that's this emphasis on, the reason I say that is because when you look at all these things that are unresolved and never faced, you're dealing with personally unresolved people, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, who are trying to guide us from just what they know, which again, at the end of the day, to each their own. It's all perspective. But we're talking about undeveloped emotional people, undeveloped people who never knew the importance of gaining a different perspective personally on their self-worth or value. While we're 30s, mid-30s, 40s, are still trying to realize, like, oh my gosh, it's hitting us now. I've learned all of this when I realized I've been in the presence or been around people who their self-worth or their belief systems is centered around working hard, not prioritizing their well-being, money and material gain rather than things internal. In my perspective, it's the false sense of empowerment to give us all these things that truly doesn't balance out our lives, because this is about balance. So when we're talking about I'm asking you, how have we allowed people who are undeveloped, who are still trying to give our children an education system, which if you learn the Latin meaning or the etymology of things, where it's to lead one out of ignorance, which again, we're talking about undeveloped people. It's like a child. When you go through child development very young, where if you don't have certain things that are given to you, then when you look at certain classes or people, when you look at certain things that people are given, and you're wondering why their behavior is the way that they are, their behavior patterns, because they're undeveloped. We're talking about undeveloped minds, undeveloped emotions, undeveloped mental states, people who never progress past the age of 4 and 5 because they're still acting out experiences, reliving experiences through trauma. They're still reliving things, patterns, and so forth through experiences that they never process. This is your grandmother, these are your parents, they never processed the event. And so therefore, all of these things cannot be ignored, people. They can no longer be ignored. We're dealing with people who who have suppressed so much over the years, and they're asking us to do the same without evolving, without acknowledging, without taking accountability. Where does it start? We have to. I want to make you uncomfortable because so that shit can come out. I'm not going to be passive aggressive because the thing is, you're teaching our children to be passive aggressive. You're teaching them, you're preparing them to develop more impulsivity or impulsiveness, whatever you call it. You're teaching them to never be who they are in an authentic way. Not only that, you're telling us to just take on your belief systems without rebellion or without being honest with ourselves. You smell that? Bullshit. And that's the thing. We have to recognize that we've been in other shit for so long that we have become encapsulated or consumed by it to where we have to wash off shit. We have to acknowledge it. Oh my God, that was my mama shit. I returned that. That's not mine. That was my daddy's stuff. You know, y'all passed this for so long to where we have to acknowledge it now. And now you're pissed. Now you're upset because it's the uncomfortability around the conversations you never had and never wanted to have. So now I have to go get therapy from someone who feels safe because you're not safe. A lot of us have not been safe for ourselves. A lot of us don't even know how to be safe. You're talking about people who prioritize verbalizing or verbally abusing their kids, physically abusing their kids. All these things because they have unresolved shit. And you mad at us because we're trying to resolve it because we don't want to do the very things you did. You're pissed and you're angry because you really got a deeper thing going on here. And you feel like you're upset at me because I'm not wanting to do what you did. How am I supposed to be better if I don't make better decisions consciously or awareness around this? Your way is not my way. I'm going a different route. And as I'm pioneering this, I accepted that I won't be liked and embraced by people such as who have deep insecurities, who don't even know and have an identity around who the fuck they are. So I'm not going to be bothered by that. As I pioneer things, as I'm restoring things, so things can be more balanced for not only myself but for my kids and other generations of people who are ready for things like this and ready to face uncomfortabilities around what their parents and their parents' didn't resolve. Hey, email me, contact me. If you're ready for me to speak, I'm ready. Because no one's have to accept y'all world. That's y'all world. We didn't go through the same thing. I'm grateful that y'all showed me. You know, there are still gems and people that I'm grateful from learning from. But there are things, again, I do not have to accept. I do not have to be inauthentic just because you were. I do not have to feel shame and guilt around because you didn't have a clear plan for your life. You didn't have a clear plan. So therefore, I realized through the instability, through the inability to process and regulate your emotions, I realize now I don't have to feel shame and guilt around that to pass that along to the generations after me. I don't have to feel guilty around my success. I don't have to feel shame around success in a peaceful manner to accept that I'm okay. I am safe now. I'm beautiful. I'm divine. I love myself. I have to learn to love myself in the parts of the things that y'all did not resolve. Move around. So again, who people believe you should be and how you should be, it's none of your business. Y'all take care of yourself. Peace and blessings. Shalom.